Hey guys, it's Alex, and today I just wanted to give everyone a little overview video of how the light show here works. So the video has been getting like some insane views this year. It is absolutely blowing up. Like in the past years, it's gotten maybe like 60 to 100 views per 48 hours around the holiday season, but this year it's getting like 2,000 views per 48 hours according to YouTube, which is absolutely insane. And I've been getting some comments asking me to kind of just go over how all this stuff works. So that's what I am planning on doing in this video. This isn't going to be like an insanely intensive, detailed overview. It's going to be a little bit higher level than that, just because it would take forever if I was going into like a ton of detail about it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I want to start here by just going over all of the different props that we are using in the show. So first off, we have the little arches or hoops, whatever you want to call them. We have those right here. There are 8 of them. Then back there in the back, you can see we have 8 candy canes as well. The reason I chose 8 for both of these is because, well, there are 8 notes in an octave in music. And this kind of allows me to visualize notes on both the arches and the candy canes by just flashing different ones that correspond to whatever note in that octave I'm currently playing in the song. And then over here, we have a big mega tree. All this stuff is very DIY, so please excuse the rather questionable build quality in places. We'll talk about that a little more later. This tree is about maybe like 11 or 12 feet tall. It's pretty good sized. Then over here, this is actually not present in the video that's on YouTube. This is a more recent addition, but this is a sign that tells people to tune their radio to 97.9 FM. And of course it lights up and everything, uses the same lights as everything else, because you might recall from the video of the light show that's on YouTube, there's just a little piece of paper taped to that tree right there to tell people what station to tune to, but that's obviously not a very good method of doing things. So now we have an actual sign to do it instead, so that's nice. And then if we look on the house itself, we can see even more lights. So first off, this bush over here has a strand of lights in it. This bush over here also has a strand of lights in it. And then we have lights going along the roof line, starting there, going up here, down here, up there, all the way down, up, down, and all the way. It ends right about there on the corner of the house. And then we also have lights going around the door right here. Then that same strand connects over to the window right here, as well as this window right here. So then our last set of lights is up here on the roof. We have a star right there, and then another identical star right up there. And I believe that is everything for this light show. So now that we've talked about what the props actually are, let's talk about how they are constructed. All right, so starting off with the arches, they're pretty simple here. You can see they're just made of some wire. It's pretty thick wire. I'm not sure what the exact wire gauge is, but I'd say maybe like 1/8 of an inch diameter. It's pretty large wire. And I'm not even sure like what this wire was called when I bought it, or like what it was intended for. So I can't really give any details about that, unfortunately. But I think I got it at like Lowe's or Home Depot or something. It's just thick wire. And it's 2 pieces of this twisted together for like increased strength. And then at the foot of the arch here, you can see that each of the strands, they kind of fork out, and then each strand plugs into the ground for increased rigidity to basically make it stand up properly. And I just bent the wire into the proper shape here. The distance from one side to the other is about 3 feet. Just repeated that 8 different times, and that's where the 8 arches come from. And then as for the actual lights themselves, I'm just using these little 12-volt individually addressable WS2811 pixels. These are pretty popular in light shows. They're really nice. I like them a lot. They're nice and bright since they run off 12 volts. They're not super expensive, so if you end up breaking them, it's not a huge deal to buy more. They're also waterproof, as you can probably see here, which is pretty important for having them outside. And the particular pixels that I'm using, I buy them from a website called Holiday Coro, which they specialize in selling products for light shows like this. And originally, I was actually buying them from a seller on Amazon called Alatove. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. But unfortunately, the pixels from that seller were not very reliable, and I ended up having to like replace every single light in the entire light show because the pixels were just so unreliable. And that was pretty expensive, so that was pretty dumb. The pixels on Amazon are a lot cheaper, or not a lot cheaper, like maybe $6 or $7 cheaper per strand than these from Holiday Coro, but the Amazon pixels are also way less reliable, so I would avoid those if I were you. And also, the Holiday Coro pixels, they are really nice because they come with these great waterproof connectors here, whereas the ones from Amazon do not come with waterproof connectors, so you have to waterproof them manually. But these are really nice. They screw together and lock, and the other end of each strand also has a connector. If we look down here, you can see the other end with its connector, and it just goes like that all the way down. Each strand has 50 pixels on it, and they are spaced, I believe, 3 inches apart. So yeah, I really like these lights, highly recommended, and these are what I'm using for every prop in this entire light show. So now, looking at the candy canes over here, you can see they are constructed a little bit differently from the arches. So with the candy canes, we have this, I believe it's like aluminum pipe. I don't remember exactly what I bought, but I think it's like aluminum pipe of some kind. It's like maybe 1/2 inch diameter, maybe 3/4. I think 1/2 inch diameter. And it's just bent into a little candy cane shape at the top here with this pipe bending tool that I got. It's a tool that's like explicitly made for bending this type of pipe. So that made it pretty easy. Then this part is just, well, a straight piece of pipe. And then it stabs into the ground. If I don't want to pull it out of the ground, but if you look at the end that's in the ground, I cut it so that it comes to a point at the end, so it stabs into the ground and holds itself in pretty darn well. And there are just 8 of these, and the lights start at the bottom of each one, come up the top, and then here at the end, there's just a little bit of wire that connects the end of this pixel to the start of the next pixel. So this wire runs all the way down the side of the candy cane, and then here at the bottom, it connects to this pixel, and then that just repeats for each of the candy canes. And yeah, I don't know why I used yellow wire here. It's pretty ugly. I probably should have used a more appealing color instead, but well, that's just what I had on hand, so that's what I used. And once again, these are using those same Holiday Coro pixels, and the pixels are just attached with some tape, just like they were on the arches. I know there are better ways of doing it, but that's just what I had on hand, and if it works, it works. So yeah, that's everything for the arches. So now let's just take a look at our 2 bushes over here. So this is very, very simple. All it is a strand of pixels that just kind of gets wrapped around in the bushes. It just goes up, down, just kind of in these little hanging U shapes. That's really all it is in this bush. This bush has 3 ups and 3 downs, whereas since this one's a lot bigger, it has 4 ups and 4 downs. But it's very simple. It's literally just lights hanging in a tree. Not really a lot to say there. Now, all the lights mounted on the house are also pretty simple. They're an absolute pain to get up there, but in terms of the actual mounting mechanism, they are really simple. So if we walk up really close here, you can see they are just attached with staples from a staple gun. You gotta be really careful not to accidentally staple through the wire itself. I've done that a few times, and that's never fun. But yeah, they're just stapled in there with a staple gun. And yes, once again, I know that there are much better ways of doing this than a staple gun. I know they make like actual rails you can install on your trim on the outside of your house, where you can just keep them like permanently mounted all year. But well, once again, this is just kind of what I had. It's cheap, I don't have a lot of money, so this is what I went with, and if it works, it works. So for the roof up there, it's just a bunch of strands connected in series. But for the door and windows down here, it's a little bit different because I didn't want to just waste a bunch of lights connecting the door over to the window, over to the next window, because these are all on the same circuit. I didn't want to waste a bunch of strands doing that. So what I ended up doing instead is I cut off the end of the strand on the door and soldered that connector onto it. And then I just ran a piece of 3-conductor wire in between there and the window here, and then that just goes up to the connector on the lights on the window, goes around the window, and then into another connector right here that then takes it through this wire over to our last set of windows over here. And I'll talk a little bit more about the wire that I like to use a little bit later on. Now for the stars on the roof, it's kind of hard to get a good view of them because, well, they're up on the roof. but just take my word for it, they are made of the exact same wire that I used on the arches over there, except now it's bent into a star shape instead of like a little arch shape. And for the stars, I only used one piece of it instead of two twisted together, because they get a lot of support up there on the roof, and they don't really need to be like super strong or sturdy. And if I zoom in here, you can probably see they are attached to the roof with like little clamps. I'm not sure what the like intended purpose of the clamps is, but they're these like little red clamps that clip onto the shingles, and that is how that is attached to the roof. Then over here we have the Tune radio sign. This is also pretty darn simple. I ordered the sign itself from Holiday Coro, the same company that makes the lights, and then they provide a nice little pattern here on the back so you can see exactly where you need to put your pixels in order to create different numbers, and it comes with a little sheet to show you like how all that works. It makes it super easy. You just stab all of your pixels through the holes here to form the numbers that you need, and you've got a really nice Tune radio sign. So that's about all there is to that. And then last but not least, we have the tree here. And if there are any of these props that I could redesign, this would definitely be first on that list, because, well, you can kind of see at the top, it's not in great shape. It's starting to kind of like twist around. It's not doing super well. So let's just take a look at how it's constructed. Like in general, I think the design is pretty okay. It's just the issue is the materials that I used. So you can see here at the bottom, all this is a bunch of PVC pipe right here with these little metal T's in between. So we just have a little section of pipe, a T, another section of pipe, a T, and that happens all the way around. And the pipe is flexible enough that you can bend it into a little circle here, and that forms the tree's base. So then for all of these vertical pipes on the tree, we just put a little coupling, a PVC coupling onto the top of the T. And then this is, I believe, it's 1/2 or 3/4 inch pipe, I don't remember. But one of those 1/2 or 3/4 PVC goes into each one of these, and these are spray painted silver just to make it a little more holiday themed, but obviously that's not necessary. And the lights were originally taped on with packing tape because this is the first prop that I built, and I didn't realize that packing tape wouldn't hold up super well outside at the time. But now that has mostly been replaced with duct tape and maybe a little bit of electrical tape as well for holding the lights on. And then these pipes go up. They go up through the stiffening ring here. This is just an aluminum strip that has been bent into a circle here. And then these little pipe clamp things, I'm not sure what they're called exactly, but they're these little plastic clamps with that we put screws through in order to hold the pipes to our metal ring here. And that just kind of helps stiffen the tree and keep the pipes from like bending and twisting as much. Although you can see from the twist at the top that it's not entirely successful, because yeah, we still got a pretty significant twist up there. So yeah, the pipes just go all the way to the top, and at the very top there is a little wooden ring with more of the little pipe clamp things on it. And all the pipes go into those little rings and are held together with the piece of wood at the top. So definitely the most complicated design out of everything. And if there was something I could change to make it better, it would probably be replacing all the PVC pipe here with metal pipe, sort of like what's being used on the arches, or I'm sorry, not the arches, the candy canes instead. Because I think the big problem here that's making it bend like this is just these pipes are just too flexible. But we can maybe fix that next year and get it looking better. In terms of the lights, there are lights on, I believe there are 12 poles around the entire tree, and there are lights on the front 6. I didn't really see a need to put them on the back 6 because it didn't really seem to make a huge difference in terms of the aesthetics when I simulated it in software, so I just didn't bother in real life. But yeah, just pixels going up and down each one, and yeah, that is everything for the tree. So now that we talked about all of the props here, let's talk about how they are actually connected back to the controller. And that is through this 3-conductor wire here. I just got this off Amazon. It's, as the name implies, it has 3 conductors inside it. It's 18 gauge wire, pretty cheap, stranded, just because that makes it more flexible. I really like this stuff. It works super well. So I just solder that onto the pixels come with these little pigtail connectors that plug into the input connector on each set of pixels, and then on the other end you just get 3 wires that you can solder onto your own cabling. So I've just soldered those on here. Red is 12 volts, black is ground, and then yellow or green is signal. That's the data signal that tells the pixels to turn on and off and the different intensities and stuff. So those are all just soldered and heat shrink tubing onto our white 3-conductor wire here, which then runs all the way back up to the house. So you can see all of our wiring from a bunch of different things. It looks pretty awful, but it all kind of comes together here in the flower bed. And then up on the porch here, everything comes up here, goes under the doormat. And now we get even more stuff joining it off of the roof up here. And then all of the wiring eventually goes through that hole in the screen onto the screen porch. And that's where all the electronics are located. So I am going to head over there and we can take a look at all that. So now we are here on the porch, and here you can see all of the electronics that are controlling the show inside this little plastic box here. And the purpose of the box is just to keep everything kind of compact, and also to protect it from the elements, because we definitely don't want any of the stuff getting rained on. But anyways, all of the wires from all of our different sets of lights, they all come in here. They're all labeled with a little piece of tape with stuff written on it just saying what the wire connects to, so we don't have to like go outside and trace it all the way back to whatever it is. And then all of these sets of wire plug into these little terminal blocks here. Here are some spares so you can kind of just see what they look like. They're just these little pluggable terminal blocks, and all the wires terminate in those, and they plug straight into this Falcon controller here. It's an F16 V3 board from Falcon Pixel Controllers. Here is a second one I just have as a spare. So you can kind of see what it looks like. It's a really nice board. I would highly recommend it. It's kind of on the expensive side. It's like maybe $230 or something. I don't know. They might have come down in price since when I bought mine. But yeah, they're kind of pricey, but they work really well. They got a lot of cool features, very reliable. I think there are a couple other brands that have started making good controllers for a little bit cheaper now. I don't know their names off the top of my head, but I'll put them in the video at this point if I can find any that seem like comparable to these in terms of quality. But yeah, these controllers, each one supports up to 16 different strands of pixels. That's why there are 16 connectors on each controller. All of the outputs are fused with these fuses down here, so if you accidentally short something out, instead of destroying your controller or your lights, the fuse will just blow, so that's really nice. These are flexible. They support 5 volt or 12 volt input for your lights. They have Ethernet and Wi-Fi, a little OLED display there for configuration. They got a lot of really cool stuff. I'm not even close to using all the features these things have, but they've got a lot of really cool things going on. And then for powering everything, I just have this big Meanwell power supply here. You can get these off Amazon for pretty cheap. This is a 12 volt supply, obviously. I don't remember the wattage off the top of my head, but it's enough for powering all the lights. You can see we've just got this 2-conductor wire here. I think this is also 18 gauge, just taking 12 volts from the supply and putting it straight into the Falcon board right there to power it. That's what these 2 connectors are on the end. Those are power. And each power connector powers half of these ports here. So you could have half your ports running on 5 volts and half of them running on 12 or something like that. Or here I just have them all running on 12. But very flexible, very, very flexible protocol here. I really like everything about this controller. So this is the controller that actually turns the lights on and off, but you're probably wondering what actually controls the actual show itself. And that is where this Raspberry Pi comes into play. This is what actually sends the commands over to the controller to tell it to turn lights on and off accordingly. So this is just a Raspberry Pi 4. You do not need a Pi that powerful. You can get by with a 3, probably a 2, maybe even a 1, I'm not sure. But definitely a 2 or a 3 would probably work, and a 4 absolutely would. And then U5 would be way overkill. But yeah, this is a Raspberry Pi 4. It's running an operating system called Falcon Pi Player. It's just a Linux distro actually made by the same Falcon people who make this controller here. Although note that you do not need to be using a Falcon controller in order to use Falcon Pi Player. It will work with other controller brands as well. But yeah, it's just running Falcon Pi Player on here. And it connects over to our Falcon board here over Ethernet. So that's what this cable is right here. It's just an Ethernet cable plugging into, I'll just show you on this board, plugging into this Ethernet port right here. And then the other Ethernet port right here, it has a built-in network switch. That's what that little chip right there is. Our other Ethernet port here, it plugs into a really long Ethernet cable, the black one right in there, which then goes all the way into the house and allows me to access all the equipment here over the network. So that this cable here is not necessary for the show itself. You do not need to connect everything to your home network for the show to run. But I keep it connected all the time because it lets me easily just use the web interfaces of the Pi and the Falcon controller in order to adjust settings and just make sure everything's working right and that sort of good stuff. So that's what that's for. But all the actual commands are sent just over this Ethernet cable right here from the Pi to the Falcon. And the sequences that it actually runs for the show, they are all stored on the Pi's SD card here, and all of the scheduling and that sort of stuff is handled by the Pi. And the audio output is also handled by the Pi. You can see that right here. I've just got a 3.5mm audio cable plugged into the Pi's audio output here, and that goes out to the yard, and I will show you what that connects to here in a second. And yeah, all the wiring here, it looks really convoluted and pretty confusing, but it all just boils down to exactly what I just explained. It's really not that terrible once you really look into it and familiarize yourself with everything. So yeah, that's about it for the electronics. I'm gonna go follow this cable outside and I will show you where it ends out on the radio transmitter out there, and then I think we can move on to the software side of things. So that 3.5mm audio cable comes all the way down off the porch, down into the yard here, and along with this extension cord, it goes into, oh, ignore this big pile of lights here. These are all the bad Alatov lights from Amazon that had to been replaced. So yeah, just ignore that. But yeah, both the extension cord and the 3.5mm audio jack go into this big plastic tub here, which sits out in front of the tree that previously, a couple years ago, had the Tune Radio sign on it. And if we look inside the tub here, you can see we have a big boom box down here on the bottom, as well as a little FM radio transmitter on the top. So the extension cord just plugs into a power strip back behind this stuff to power both the transmitter and the boom box. And for the transmitter, the audio cable just plugs into the input here in the front. It's set to transmit on a frequency of 97.9 FM because that frequency was unused in our area. And now when people drive by, they can just tune their radios to that frequency and listen in to the songs that are playing. And then the purpose of the boombox here is so that people who are just walking down the street can also hear the show without having to bring a portable radio with them or something, because that isn't usually something that people do when walking around the neighborhood. So yeah, the radio is just tuned to that same 97.9 FM station. So when all of this stuff turns on at night, the speakers here on the boombox will start playing the exact same stuff that everyone would be hearing on the radio. And the audio quality isn't super great because this thing's kind of old, and I think some humidity, some moisture has probably gotten into it thanks to sitting out in this tub for a while. So the audio quality is not amazing, but it's definitely passable. It's good enough. And yeah, the whole reason for having the tub here is just for some waterproofing, because obviously this stuff is not inherently waterproof. You can see we got some water on top of the tub there, so I guess it's kind of doing its job and preventing the water from getting onto all this stuff. But yeah, that's what the tub in the front is for. So yeah, I think that's about it in terms of the outdoor hardware side of things. So let's go ahead and head on inside and we can look at the software that controls all this. Alright, so now we're in here on my computer and we can take a look at how everything works on the software side of things. So this is the program that I use for sequencing all the effects for the light show. It's called X-Lights. I would highly recommend this software. It is really, really good. The community for it is amazing. There's so much support if you ever need help with something. It can be quite a learning curve at first because there's a lot of stuff going on here, but once you learn how to use it, it's a really, really nice piece of software. but I'm not going to teach you how to use it here because that would take way too long, but we can at least go over some of the basics of how to use it. So the first thing you do before you actually start sequencing a show, of course, first you kind of need to set up your show and determine where you're going to be putting your lights. So for that, you can actually import a picture of your house into the software. So you can see that right here. And then you can start to draw lights over the picture to get an idea of how it's actually going to look in real life. So you can see I've done that here, and it looks pretty darn similar to the actual show we just looked at outside. This over here, this random like window frame looking thing on the side, that is actually in the show. It's just, this is for the tune radio sign, because that sign, it does not matter the shape that the lights are in, because they're always just going to be on white the entire time anyway, because we never need to do any lighting effects with the tune radio sign. So just because I was lazy and wanted to get it done quick, I just modeled that sign with a rectangle here. But yeah, that's all there is to it. You just draw out all of your props using all these little options up here, and then you can click on it once it's drawn out to adjust a bunch of parameters for each prop. Like if we click on an arch here, you can see like the number of nodes, meaning the number of lights per arch. You can change that. You can change the number of degrees through which the arch arcs. You can do a bunch of things like that. So many different settings you can adjust here. The protocol the lights use, we're using WS2811, so we put that there. So many different options. Of course, you can drag them around as well to adjust their locations and their scales and all that stuff. So that's your first step, just for drawing out your light show. And then you can also go in and give each prop a name, just so that you can address it better later on when you are actually sequencing your show. So now that we've got the layout set, we can look at the sequencing itself. So now I've clicked over into the sequencer tab here, and this is where all the magic happens. This is where you actually sequence the effects to make your show work. So you can see over on the left here, we have a house preview on the bottom, which shows all of the lights overlaid on your house and what that looks like. And then on the top here, we have a model preview, which will only show the lights without the image of the house in the background. And both of these will animate accordingly as you add effects to the timeline here. So the timeline here, for anybody who's familiar with video editing, this probably looks pretty recognizable, and that's basically how it works. You just drag effects into the timeline to synchronize them with your music. We have all of the different props here available in this list right here, so you just drag the effect into the particular prop that you want that effect to apply to. But then I've also made groups up here for some of the props, like for the roof, for everything on the house, which is the stars, the roof, the door and windows, all that stuff. Plants, which refers to just everything in the bushes, right? All that stuff. So this way, if you want to apply an effect to multiple different things at once, you can just drag it into one of these groups up here instead of having to do it manually for each of the different props. So you can see that here. You can see all the sequencing I've done. There's so many different effects you can use. You can find all of them up in this bar up here, and you just drag your desired effect into your timeline here, and then you can click on the effect and adjust a bunch of different parameters relating to it. So this effect here is called butterfly. When you click on it, you can actually see over here on the side, you can see a preview of what it looks like. So the preview up on the top is a preview of just that effect, whereas the preview here on the bottom, the house preview, is a preview of that effect combined with all of the other effects that are also currently playing at that moment in time in the light show. So that effect is called butterfly. You can see we could change it to a different effect, like fill maybe. I don't know what that one does. Well, okay, clearly it doesn't do anything without me changing some of the parameters. It just seems like it's kind of a frozen version of the butterfly effect. So let's just change that back to butterfly, but you can see we can adjust so many different parameters here. We could adjust the speed, and you can see how much faster it is now. Let's change that back to 10 though. But you can see we can change so many different parameters about the effects, and then when we want to actually play the show to see how this will all look all together, all fully animated, we can just put our playhead somewhere, hit the space bar, and now you can see it's playing through this part of the show. Look in the bottom pane here. The top pane is just showing what's occurring with the windows, but the bottom pane is showing everything that's happening in the entire show at this point in time. And you can also add the music to this as well, so you can hear what it's sounding like with the music. I don't have that added in here at the moment because I accidentally lost the audio file, and I don't feel like, getting it back. But you trust me, you can also do this with the music to get a better feel of how everything is working. And it does take a really long time to go through and sequence an entire song like this. It takes longer than you may think, but it is well worth it in the end. It's fun to just experiment with this stuff and eventually come up with something that is really cool and really satisfying. So now that we have talked about X-Lights, let's move over to the web interfaces of the Pi and the Falcon Pi player and talk a little bit about those. Okay, so this here is the web interface for the Falcon Pixel controller. You just go to the IP address of the controller on your home network, and bam, you get this nice little interface here. This is just the status page where it tells you a little bit about the stats of the controller, uptime, temperature, all that sort of stuff. Don't really care about that here. There's also this cool testing window where if we enable this, if you were looking outside right now, you could see that when we enable this, all of the lights turn on and start doing a rainbow color wash pattern, so you can check everything to make sure everything is working properly. And you can select which particular ports out of those 16 ports, as well as a few serial ports as well, which I'm not using here. You can select which ports you want to run this test on, and you can see they're also labeled here with what they're connected to in the yard. So if we go over here to output settings and string ports, you can actually see how that configuration works. So for each port, you just select the type of pixel that you're using. All of mine are WS2811, so that's what that is. Then you can add a description, just a name for each prop, so you have an easy way of determining what's connected to what. Then you add the start channel number, which you get this from X-Lights. If we go back over to X-Lights for a second, you can see that each prop has a start channel number and an end channel number. And the way you get the number of channels needed for a particular prop is you just take the number of pixels in that prop and then multiply it by 3 for the red, green, and blue channels, and then that is your number of channels. So you just look at what you have in X-Lights here, and you type that start channel in over here, and then instead of having to enter an end channel, all you do is you just type in the pixel count, and it will automatically calculate the end channel for you based on that information. So that makes it a little bit easier there. And there's some other parameters over here that you can mess with, like maximum brightness, the order of addressing, whether red comes first, whether green, there's all the different orderings that are possible because the lights communicate over a serial interface. The direction at which they're being addressed, forward versus reverse, all that sort of stuff. That's really all there is to it on the Falcon end of things. You just configure this, you got your test menu if you need that, and that's really about it. There are obviously other things you can do here too if you want to do some more advanced stuff, but we really don't need any of that here. This is about it. I mean, there might be a little bit of other stuff I'm forgetting, so definitely read the manual if you're doing this yourself. But yeah, there's really not much you have to do over here on the Falcon end of things. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's take a look at the Falcon Pi Player interface. So now here we are in the Falcon Pi Player web interface, and instead of having to type in the IP address for the Pi like you had to do for the Falcon over here, for Falcon Pi Player, you can just type in fpp.local, and here you go. This is what you get. I really like this UI. This whole software, it's very, very well made. It's really easy to use, really flexible. It's just really nice. But up here in the corner, it'll show you like time and date, IP address, status like CPU temperature, which that's a little warm, but it's probably fine. And then here, this is just the main status screen where we can see the next playlist that's going to be played, which is my Christmas show playlist, which is going to start tonight at 5:30, and it'll play every day starting at 5:30. If we look at a preview here, you can see exactly what the schedule looks like for the entire month. You can see it'll start playing at 5:30 each night. It'll play the Christmas show, then at 11 p.m. at night, it will stop with the Christmas show, and it's set to a graceful stop, which means that it won't just randomly cut off in the middle of a song. It will finish the song it's playing before it shuts off. So that's always nice, so it's not just an abrupt cutoff right at 11. So then once that's done, whenever it finishes that last song, then it will start playing the static lights sequence. And what this is this is just all the lights being on in a static configuration, no longer synchronized to music, no longer flashing. And the reason for this is just so the neighbors don't get too mad about flashing lights all night. So the last hour from 11 to 12 is just static lights, like a regular Christmas light display. And then at midnight, it finally shuts off for good, and it's just off for the rest of the night, and that just repeats every single night. And you can create these playlists by just going into content setup over here and selecting playlists over here. And then we can go into our playlist and we can add sequences to it. So you can see here we have our 2 sequences for Christmas Eve Sarajevo and Wizards in Winter, the 2 songs that you've probably seen in the light show video. So we just put those in our playlist here. And then we can adjust some other settings of the playlist, like we can copy it, we can rename it, we can just completely delete it, you know, that sort of stuff. We can save it, we can go in and adjust some other settings, all that good stuff. And to actually add the content here, like the actual sequence files, you export them from Xlights in this FSEQ format. And I believe that stands for Falcon Sequence, but I'm not sure. And then under content setup here, we can go to the file manager. And I'm not sure why it's saying the storage device is almost full, because that's like a 64 gig SD card, and it is not almost full. But we can just upload our sequence file straight from our computer right here, and the sequence files all just go right in here. And then we also have to upload the audio files that go along with these sequences. And then if they have the same names, it will automatically pair the sequence file with the audio file. So when you select a sequence file when creating a playlist, it will automatically pull the audio file into. And there are other options over here for like video, images, effects, scripts, and all this stuff. I don't use any of those. I'm sure those are very useful for more complicated shows, but for what I've got going here, I don't really need to use any of those. Then we go into the scheduler here, and this is where you set it to turn the light show on at particular times and turn it off at other times. It's pretty easy to use interface here. You can just add an item to the list, and you can just select start dates, end dates, what days of the week, all that sort of stuff in order to set up when things are going to turn on and off. And then over here, if we go to input output setup and go to channel outputs, this is where you add your actual pixel controller board. So in this case, I've just called it F16V3 board because that's the board I'm using, the Falcon pixel controller. Then you select your output type, E1.31 multicast. That's what you would choose if you're using Ethernet like I am. And then you just specify your start channel universe, all that sort of good stuff. And that is really all there is to it in terms of configuring everything. The Falcon Pi player is really not very difficult to use. So that's really everything I wanted to go over in this video. So I hope everybody enjoyed. There are links to a lot of the products that I've been talking about here down in the description of the video. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.